Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Sell More Academy, the mastermind for more sales. My name is Ben McGarry, and for the last 2 decades, I've spent nearly every day trying to figure out how to sell more stuff. I've been in the trenches selling my own products and services for years. I built teams, companies, and systems that sell from Main Street, small town USA, all the way to Wall Street. I've also been fortunate enough to coach and consult for countless others worldwide, all in totaling over $150 million in sales. During that time, it has become painfully obvious that the marketplace is, and always will be, loud and noisy. These days, content creators and social media gurus promote clickbait tactics and short-sighted strategies that often cause more harm than good. It seems like everyone has all the tools at their fingertips, but no one really knows how to put it all together. Plus, what worked yesterday might not work today and will almost certainly be different again by tomorrow. And that's precisely why I started Sell More Academy, to build a community and a set of resources to help you stay ahead of the curve, to help cut through the noise and make sense of the next best step. At Sell More Academy, we focus on what we consider to be the 5 pillars of modern business success: AI, branding, marketing, sales, and systems. We bring this to you through a powerful combination of a vibrant mastermind community where you can connect with and learn from fellow high achievers and experts in the field, live masterclasses just like this one where we dive deep into specific strategies and tactics covering one pillar each day, a curated collection of resources, including free tools that we're building to help you sell more effectively, and our Sell More directory, connecting you with pre-vetted providers and solutions that you'll need when it's time to outsource or just find the right tool for the job. Our goal here is to provide you with everything that you need to not only stay informed and competitive, but to sell a lot more stuff. And that brings us to today's masterclass, where we're covering AI, but specifically how to build a knowledge base that will power your AI. If you've been with us through other masterclasses, interviews, questions that sell more, building a lead machine, how to talk to AI, you know that we've covered a lot of ground, but there's a missing piece that ties it all together, and that missing piece is the knowledge base. So here's the reality. While some companies are spending billions training generic AI, you have something available to you that they don't. Your unique business knowledge, your frameworks, your principles, your voice, your processes, your proven systems. So the question isn't whether AI is powerful. It is. We all know that. The question is, are you going to let it be generic, or are you going to make it yours? When you organize your knowledge the right way and give it to AI as context, something will happen. The generic AI becomes your AI. It becomes highly specialized, defensible, and it becomes your competitive advantage. So in this class, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through exactly how to build that system. I'm going to give you the 5 principles that make a knowledge base actually work for AI, and the 5 categories of knowledge that you need to capture. Then I'll give you the 3 extraction steps to get all of that knowledge out of your head and into a system. Then in part 2, this is a 3-part series. In part 2, we'll show you how to actually build the knowledge base. And then in part 3, we're going to build it live for Sell More Academy together. So there's a real example in a workshop. So let's start with part 1, what's actually happening, because understanding this is really going to make everything else make sense. Okay, so let's talk about something that is critical for every business today: how to build a knowledge base that truly powers your AI. This isn't just about storing information. It's about creating an operational system for your entire business. We're going to dive into making your AI smarter, relevant, and truly impactful. This is about moving beyond the generic AI inputs to something that actually understands your unique operations. Together, we're going to explore how to make your knowledge base the central nervous system for all of your AI initiatives and for your company. So let's dive into some of the
What's up, dude?
real.
Hey, not much. What's up, dude?
Hey, all right. So, quick question for you.
Hey, Anthony.
Okay, so if you get a call,
Hey,
right?
Anthony.
While you're on that call, are you updating things?
There we go. Got it. All right. Thanks, Anthony. All right. So next piece here, the current reality. We're all facing this. Everybody's talking about AI, but many people are still struggling to make it work for them, not just as a novelty. So we're seeing a huge push for AI adoption, but often without a clear strategy for feeding it the right information. The market is just flooded with AI tools, but their effectiveness kind of hinges on the data that you provide. So this isn't actually about the AI itself, it's about the fuel that you give it. We need to move past the hype and really focus on practical application. Now, this is really, really important. Companies are currently spending over $1 billion a year to train AI. What companies? Big companies, small companies, companies all over are hiring white collar workers to label data. Please understand that. Forever, we have outsourced things like data entry. We've outsourced it overseas. We've outsourced it to automation. We've outsourced it to the lowest denominator that we could possibly come up with. And now we're seeing a flip. We're seeing white collar workers training data, labeling things, organizing things. They're building this so that they can build on top of it. Just understand the urgency that is here, because if we don't build a proprietary knowledge base, then our AI is no different than their AI. So there's nothing unique about us. We don't have to spend $1 billion, but we need to organize our existing knowledge so that we can give our AI context. So this is an opportunity for a very real competitive advantage. And this brings us to a problem that I see every single day. The problem is this: AI is completely generic without context. You guys all know this, but think about it. You can have the most powerful AI model in the world, but if it doesn't understand your business, your customers, your processes, it's really just another fancy chatbot. It can't give you specific answers or take meaningful actions. The lack of context is why so many AI implementations fall short of their expectations. It's like having a super brilliant employee who knows nothing about your company. So how do we move from the generic AI all the way over to something that's just fundamentally different? How can we solve this? Well, the solution is pretty clear. Your knowledge base becomes AI's operating system. This is where you inject all that critical content in, that context that you need. It's not just about a collection of documents. It's the entire brain of your AI, providing specific, nuanced information, those tiny details that it needs to perform. The knowledge base is what transforms generic AI solutions into an intelligent assistant or an agent that understands your unique business. It's the difference between an AI that guesses and an AI that knows. Now, we've dealt with that a lot on our side. Through different models that have come out and different systems that have come out, we've learned that AI was guessing a lot more than, well, we thought so in the applications that I'm talking about. And so we had to actually go back and build knowledge bases differently to make sure that it was actually giving the right answer instead of guessing the right answer. And so what we're looking at here, as you can see, the knowledge base is going to consist of frameworks and processes, principles and philosophy, voice and tone, your case studies, templates and scripts. That is going to power whatever AI system that you're using. Every single one will be better because of your knowledge base, and then you will get specialized results out of it. So you'll have better prompts, you'll have consistent context, you will have on-brand responses, and of course, if all of those are true, then you should be able to see some operational excellence. So just keep in mind as we move through this that your knowledge base is not simply documentation. It is an operating system. It is a brain that makes AI and your company truly intelligent. So let's talk about how this actually works in practice. Okay, so here we have 3 ways that AI will use your knowledge base to deliver real value. First, it's about providing instant, accurate answers to complex questions, leveraging all of your internal data. Your team asks questions, AI is going to search through that knowledge base, provide accurate, immediate answers without guessing, without hallucinating. It's going to be able to answer across all departments. Next, it helps to automate your workflows by understanding your processes and making informed decisions. So if every bit of information is in there, then that means that all of our interactions can be customized. That AI already knows our frameworks, our voice, our tone. They know the business outcomes. Those are very important. So our goals and what the customer wants from us. And it's able to make everything relevant on each touch point. So first we have instant answers, then we have personalization. And third, it's going to use automation to really personalize the experience for your customers and really your employees because it knows who they are and what they need. So these aren't just theoretical pieces. These are practical applications that drive efficiency and will result in better outcomes every time. So we want to think of these as 3 separate ways that all work together within our knowledge base rather than 3 separate pieces that are siloed. So next we'll look at kind of the tangible ROI of this because it's going to take you time. And so it's going to take a bit to see your investment pay off there. So we've talked about how AI is going to use the knowledge base. So now let's talk about the real impact of your business. The biggest one is time saved. So we're looking at the potential here in this example of about 780 hours per year back in your pocket or your team's pocket. That's not just a number, that is a massive operational efficiency gain. Think about what your team could do with an extra 780 hours. That's almost half of a full-time employee's worth of work, redirected from searching for answers to actually doing the work that moves the needle. It's not about like cutting your staff or replacing humans with AI. It's about empowering them to be more productive, more strategic, and to get more done. It's about turning your knowledge base into a profit center instead of a cost. So how do we unlock this kind of ROI? Well, first, let's just take a quick look at this math. So when we're talking about 780 hours per year, we're saying that it's about 15 hours per week that's being saved. That's kind of intense to think about. Nearly 20 weeks of full-time work that you're going to get back over the course of a year just by taking the time to build this knowledge base. So instead of manual processes, you have automated workflows. Instead of repetitive tasks, you have AI handling routine tasks for you. A very real example of this is at Pest AI, where we use a ticketing system for our support, but we have that ticketing system backed up to our AI brain, which we use inside of ClickUp. And then we have AI agents that are actually handling the triage and the outcomes of those support tickets for us. And we did that because our team was actually falling behind, for the random tasks that we have to do through the day, and then, answering questions and building. that was one of those things that was just kind of getting left behind. And so we were able to build an agent that could actually go through, because all of the data is already there. It can go through, read the context, and take action accordingly. So another piece, without the knowledge base, you're going to end up with inconsistent outputs, the occasional hallucination, as we talked about, compared to very consistent and controlled outputs. Our knowledge base helps, along with the prompt that we talked about last week, to put our AI in a box, as we've talked about in other calls. So the team gets to spend less time on the routine work, and they get to spend more time on strategy. So all in all, we want to focus on how can we take this time saved and turn it into a competitive advantage for us. Well, the first principle for us to build this is it's critical. We need to shift our mindset, and we need to organize by business outcome, not just by topic. This isn't about filing cabinets. That's not what we're making here. We're not making filing cabinets. Instead, we're focused on how people actually use information to solve problems. When you organize by the outcome, you're anticipating the user's need, not just categorizing data. So for example, instead of a folder called HR policies, you might have onboarding new employees or resolving customer complaints. This makes the knowledge base immediately actionable and extremely relevant. It's about making it easy for your team to find the answer to the how do I achieve X question, not just what is Y. So this shift in perspective is really a foundational piece to building a knowledge base that truly serves your business. So when we're looking at the wrong way, it's how we tend to, I'll speak for myself, how I tend to organize things. Product information, features, specs, pricing, sales process, cold calling, the discovery, closing. Everything's organized by topic. And so it seems like, when we're organizing initially, it feels like the really easy way. This is great. We'll have this wiki here and everyone can go through it. But that's not how we search whenever we need something. And so the transformation, or the right way, would be to have it listed out in form of outcomes. So how to overcome competitor objections. And then we can have a competitor comparison framework, proof points and case studies, response scripts. Very, very different than what we're talking about on the other side. How to accelerate customer onboarding, an onboarding checklist, welcome sequence, success metrics. Again, all organized by outcome, because that makes it easier to find what we need. The team moves faster. AI understands the business. It moves faster. It doesn't get confused. And it makes all of our knowledge actionable, instead of just an SOP that's on a piece of paper that's not actually doing much for us. It's just informational. So we want to turn this into actionable steps that everyone can follow. So don't organize. The kind of key message here would be, don't organize by what is this, organize by how do I solve this? So not what is this, how do I solve this? That's the objective here. And this is going to set the stage for our next principle, which builds on this idea of everything being interconnected. So what we want to do here in principle 2 is to create explicit connections between our knowledge. So your knowledge base shouldn't just be a collection of isolated documents. It's not just a drive file where you throw everything into. It needs to be a network. Think about how often one piece of information relates to another. For instance, a policy on customer refunds might link directly to the process for processing a refund. And then again, over to the communication template for informing the customer about it. And so these explicit links reduce friction and eliminate dead ends, right? We know each piece of the puzzle now. It's about guiding them through that entire problem-solving journey, not just giving them one piece of the puzzle and asking them to draw their own conclusions. So this interconnectedness is what makes your knowledge base truly intelligent and useful. It leads us it'll lead us on to the third principle. But before we jump to that, I want to think of this a bit like a brain. So we have our nodes, we have all these synapses that are firing, and it's all interconnected. That's because we're constantly using multiple parts of our brain for the smallest decisions. And that's essentially what's going to happen in your knowledge base here. We want to create connections of all the little pieces that make the magic here. And connections will turn this collection of documents from, again, like I said, just a drive file or a Dropbox file into an integrated knowledge system that helps your team and will make your AI more powerful. So with that, let's just jump to the third principle here. We want to separate principles from processes. So this is really about clarity here. Principles are the why, the underlying rules and values that we're operating on. Processes are the how, the step-by-step instructions. If we mix them up, it creates confusion and makes your knowledge base actually harder to navigate, to update, and to understand. For example, a principle might be always prioritize customer satisfaction, while a process would be steps for handling a customer complaint. By keeping them distinct, it means our team can quickly grasp the overarching goal and then dive into the specific actions that are needed. And this separation is also, it makes our knowledge base more resilient to change, because we could change one piece and it could still apply to the other. So principles tend to be pretty stable, but our processes evolve over time. And so we want to be able to make those changes without having to rebuild our entire knowledge base from scratch. So again, principles are the why. This is the underlying belief, the strategy, or the core mindsets that guide our decisions. And then the processes are the how. So strategy versus tactical, the step-by-step instructions, the SOPs, the playbooks, the frameworks. Those pieces are our processes. And so this really matters because the team should always understand the why before the how. And if our knowledge base is interconnected, then that should be an easy thing for them to move to. Our principles guide how those processes are actually applied. And flexibility and execution is critical because it allows us to maintain our core beliefs while we're updating our processes. Principles are timeless and these processes can evolve. So both of these are essential. Hopefully you have a very clear distinction between the two. This will lead us directly into our next principle, which is including the crucial context that we need. So building on the clarity of separating principles and processes, our fourth principle here is to include meta information. This is the information about the information itself, right? Wow. So think about who created it, when it was last updated, who owns it, its relevance to the entire process. And that way, even though these seem like small details, it's incredibly powerful. It helps us to better trust our information. It helps our users better understand the context, whether that's a human user or an AI user. And it ensures accountability across the board. So if something is wrong, for example, knowing who to contact if a document is outdated or unclear, it's invaluable. And it's the amount of time that it saves, the amount of resources that it saves, and really the ability to keep moving forward with the task instead of task switching or getting out of our flow state. It's just massive. So this is about giving our team confidence in the answers that they find and empowering them to actually contribute to the ongoing accuracy. So now if something's out of date, they can contribute by going back to whoever owns that particular piece of information. And that way they can be part of that process with you. Now, as we're looking at it, again, we're talking about information about the information. This is not a very complicated thing. We just want to make sure that we have who's it owned by, when was it last updated, what does it apply to, the scope, and what are the topics that are involved. So whether we're using a search feature or we're manually moving through our knowledge base, this should be kind of one of those places where we start. So this will, ultimately help your team have way better reliability. It will indicate when your content needs updating. It will show the applicability to multiple different situations. That's why the scope matters. And it'll make AI smarter about when to use your knowledge. So that's kind of a tricky thing. AI is not always going to reference all of your knowledge. And so telling it when to is very important. Without meta information, your team doesn't really know if things are current, relevant, reliable. This SOPs for 3 years ago. Who knows who's responsible for it? Where do I turn? They're lost. And so what we want to do is turn the light on instead of them walking into the void. So without having the meta information there, they'll just lose confidence. It transforms your knowledge base from a static repository into a dynamic, living system. Okay. So now that we've talked about including the meta information, let's get into principle 5 here. We want to create explicit examples and counterexamples. So this is about making sure your team doesn't just understand what to do, but also what not to do. This is about clarity, plain and simple. So you see, well, people learn best when they have a clear picture of both the right way and the wrong way to do things. It helps to, well, it removes ambiguity and it speeds up adoption, which is, I think, what we all want. Think about it like this. If you're training a brand new rep, you don't just tell them how to close a deal. You show them a great pitch, and then ideally you show them a bad one. The contrast is the powerful piece. It makes it stick. The principle for really building a robust knowledge base comes down to making sure that we have good examples and counterexamples. It's not enough to just say, hey, go do this. We really need to know the inverse of that as well. So just a quick example here. The without example is use the 5-phase framework. What does that mean? Like, how do we really know that? With examples, we're saying use the 5-phase framework. Here's an actual sales call transcript showing all 5 phases. Here's what happens when you skip the fit check phase. These are from our previous conversation about the sales process. And then the result is crystal clear. The outcome is consistent application, right? And so that's the objective that we want to move forward with. It's that every time we give an example, we want to give the inverse of what not to do. And that helps to create the rules that everyone can play by. So how to create the examples, we take a real scenario from our business, we show how the framework was applied correctly, and then show what happens when it's not applied correctly for our counterexample. Okay, these are not optional examples. This is required for your team to really understand things so they're not constantly coming back to you, and particularly for your AI. We've had guests on that have really spoke to this a lot, and the idea is that as you use AI, you'll actually figure out some of the things that you need to do better with your team. And so this is one of those things. Better examples lead to better outcomes. All right, moving on. So let's actually talk about putting this together. With all those principles in mind, let's talk about the first category of content that goes into your knowledge base. And that's frameworks and processes. So these are the backbone of your entire operation. They are the step-by-step guides, the playbooks, the how we do things around here documents. So we're talking about your sales processes, your onboarding flow, your customer support escalation, your marketing. These aren't just documents. These are operational systems that that power your entire business. They ensure consistency, reduce errors, and make sure everyone is working from the same blueprint. Without clear frameworks, you're leaving way too much to chance. And that's just a recipe for inefficiency and ineffectiveness. So when we're looking at the frameworks and process, remember, these are step-by-step guides. These would be a lot of different terminology out there: frameworks, SOPs, playbooks, guides, whatever you call them internally, make sure that they're included. The how-to for accomplishing the outcome. That's what we're looking for. And so different frameworks that you'll have will apply to each and every part of your business. And over time, they'll remove guesswork. They'll make sure everyone follows the same path. They'll build consistency in both what you do internally and how your outcomes, how you produce externally. And it'll enable scaling, because when the processes are replicable and they are easily understood, well, you can grow. So frameworks are really the foundation of your knowledge base. They're the system that will make everything else work. But next, we're going to look at the foundational ideas that are behind these processes. Okay, so if we're going to build on the frameworks discussion, let's talk about category 2 here with the principles and philosophy. So this is where we define the why behind the what. It's about articulating the core beliefs and the guiding values that inform your frameworks and processes. Think about your company's mission, your customer-first approach, or even your commitment to continuous improvement. These aren't supposed to just be feel-good statements. They're the bedrock upon which all of your operational decisions are made. When your team understands the underlying principles, they can adapt and innovate the frameworks rather than just blindly following instructions and ticking off boxes. This empowers them to make smarter decisions, even in novel situations. By making sure that our principles are here, it makes it clear the why behind everything that we do. It makes our core beliefs and mindsets known, and it puts the foundational thinking in the right spot. So if a principle is, for instance, always prioritize customer value. Great. Well, we can see how it applies to 3 different examples here. Sales framework: ask questions that uncover customer needs. Marketing: create content that educates and helps. Service: solve problems that matter to the customer, right? So we take one principle and we apply it differently based on where that framework is living. The principles really should be timeless. And that's a core concept that I want you to understand. They should guide how frameworks are applied and why processes matter. Without them, we just have a knowledge base full of tactics. There's really no strategy. There's really no reason why behind it. So this is very important to make sure that we are properly documenting our why behind everything. Okay, so now that we've covered the how with the frameworks and the why with the principles, let's move on to category 3, which is our voice and tone guidelines. Now, we've talked about this in previous master classes with our brand pieces, but here we really want to document. We want to get this added into our knowledge base. This is really all about how you communicate both internally and externally, right? And we're not just talking about grammar here. We're talking about personality, consistency, and impact. Are we formal or informal? Are we direct, or are we more empathetic? These guidelines ensure that every single interaction, every email, every piece of content that you create reflects your brand and your values. It's really about creating a unified brand a unified voice, I should say, that resonates with your audience and reinforces your brand. This consistency that we continue talking about will absolutely build goodwill with your prospects, with your clients, with your leads, and it'll strengthen the relationships. Getting this right means that your message always lands the way that you intend, or should always land the way that you intend. And so when we're looking at the voice and tone guidelines, just to clarify here, the voice is the personality of our organization. Now, when we write for Sell More Academy, we base it on my personal writing voice because that's the personality of our organization. The same goes with tone. We use my tone in order to give a consistent and uniformed approach. That's not to say that would stay forever, but that's where we're at now. Your voice, your tone, these can change over time. But together, they make up how we uniquely communicate, what makes us sound different than others. Not how are we better or what's bad about them. It's how are we different? How do we sound unique according to our customers, but particularly compared to anyone else? So as we look through these, if we're welcoming a new customer, we want to be, in this particular example, we're using the same voice in all three scenarios. So, where tone is warm, enthusiastic, and welcoming. And we say something like, we're excited to work with you. Here's how we'll help. Or we could change the tone and say, we're going to be more empathetic and solution focused and direct when we're handling a customer issue and say, hey, I understand this is frustrating. Here's exactly how we'll fix it. Probably a little better than just saying I got it, right? Or we're on it, or it sounds like it's your fault. And then celebrating a customer win, we want to be celebratory, genuine, and proud. Great. You just crush your goals. Here's what we learned together. So this is an example of us using that same voice across all three different instances. So we want to document our voice characteristics. We want to document how we sound in different situations. Any particular words and phrases we use. Words and phrases you avoid. So just like the examples, we want to have the inverse. So if, for example, you never swear in your writing, great. You should probably write that down. Not that AI is going to do that by default, but it could. And that's just one other thing that you want to avoid. Maybe you want to avoid using technical jargon and you want to use language that is, accessible for 12-year-olds, whatever the case may be. That's part of the voice. And we want to create the inverse of that, of what we avoid. And then, of course, just like the example side, we want to give examples of our voice in action. We don't just tell it how to sound, we show it how to sound. This is important because if your voice is your whole brand, you want to make sure that you can document it so that it can be replicated, whether it's by your team or by AI. So do not skip category 3. Get your voice and your tone guidelines down. Speaking of messages actually landing, let's look at how we can learn from some of our real world applications. And this is category 4. So the fourth type of information that we're adding to our knowledge base. Case studies and examples. So a case study is a real world scenario or success story. How our frameworks were applied in practice. What happened and what was learned. The easiest case studies are, what were you doing first? Which framework did you apply? What specific actions were taken? What was the outcome? And what did we learn? Like, that is a beautifully laid out case study example that could apply to virtually any business. And so when we're talking about case studies, I mean, really, this is where, as they say, the rubber meets the road. This category brings everything to life by kind of showcasing the real world applications of your frameworks and principles. These are success stories. These are lessons learned. And these are really our best practices in action. They will provide us tangible proof of what works and how it works. And all we have to do in order to start this process is just begin thinking about our last successful client engagement. It's that simple. If you don't have clients and you're working on stuff in your own business, fine. Look at the last process that you improved. these aren't just stories, even though they may seem minimal to you. I know that you face them every day, but to somebody else on the outside who maybe hasn't faced that, or doesn't know how to face that, your case study and the way that you document your case study, they provide concrete examples to emulate for your team, emulate by AI, and it's just far more effective than any kind of abstract instructions that you can give. Help your team learn. Help your team learn. That's the objective here. So next, we're going to explore the ready-to-use materials that we have. So now we're talking about category 5 here, the templates and the scripts that you need to add to your knowledge base. This is where you operationalize all the knowledge that you've gathered. So think about this. Every time your team answers a common question, they're basically running a script anyway. So why not make that script explicit and repeatable? Why not make everything that we can replicable? So this category here, this section that we add to our knowledge base is all about building those reusable assets. It's about taking the absolute best practices from our case studies and turning them into actionable tools. So this could be email templates, call scripts, decision checklists, process workflows. These templates and scripts are key because they will save time. They will ensure consistency. They will improve your quality. They will accelerate the execution so things will get implemented faster. And just keep in mind, this isn't just about efficiency. It's about consistency, as we continue to bring up, and quality across your entire operation. We're moving away from understanding what works to really actually making it work in this step every single time. And so it's important to think about a couple of things when it comes to templates and particularly scripts. Templates are not just rigid rules. They provide starting points. They give you something that you can customize and improve over time. Scripts are here for a very similar purpose. Scripts help us to move through a sales process, not for us, but for the other person, so that we can walk them through the proper journey. Now, that's not to say that all scripts are created equally, but those scripts are very vital to making sure that your knowledge base performs properly. Okay, we're getting short on time, so I'm going to speed up a little bit here. We do have we're going to do 2 more sessions on just this topic, on building the knowledge base, because if we can build the knowledge base properly, then everything else is going to fall into place. So I'll move through this. I'll spend a little extra time here so that everybody is prepared for the next 2 sessions here. Let's start to take our first step here in building the system. Okay, so step 1 is simple but super critical. You just audit your existing knowledge. That's it. You just audit everything. You cannot build a better system if you don't know what you already have. That doesn't mean we start from scratch and we're just going to start building from here because, what we did in the past wasn't organized. No. We're going to audit what we have. We're going to dig into everything. Old emails, shared drives. If you have dusty binders in the corner, go grab those. Go through each one of them and figure out what information do you already possess? What do you have? Where does it live? Who's using it? And how, why, when are they using it? This isn't just about finding documents so that you have a big stack on your desk. It's about identifying the tribal or the internal knowledge that your team has that only exists in people's head, maybe only in your head. We need to map this out so that we understand our current state, warts and all, exactly how it is, before we can even consider improving it. We talked about this in other master classes. It's not going to change. You have to know where you are before you can improve that. But once you've completed this audit, and you can see all the pieces that you need to audit here, this is going to set the foundation for everything else that flows. Step 2, we are going to extract core frameworks and principles. This is where we start making sense of the chaos, looking for patterns, recurring themes, and any kind of underlying methodologies that are being used. What are the fundamental truths that drive your success? What are the repeatable processes that consistently deliver results? Again, don't just go collecting information. Distill it, make sense of it. Try to explain it to a child, right? How clear can we get this information so that we can turn raw data into actual insights and repeatable frameworks, right? So this is about identifying the how that we do things and the why behind some of our best work. Maybe it was a one-off, but that grab those ones that we need to make sure that everyone else can have the right frameworks in hand and speak the same language. Step 3 is to document your voice and your tone. Now, this may seem less technical, but it's just as crucial as any framework is. How do you want your brand to sound? What's the personality that you project in every single interaction? This is not just about marketing. This is about how your sales team communicates, how your support team responds, how your product team writes, how your operational team functions. A consistent voice throughout your company will build that goodwill, and it will reinforce your brand identity. It ensures that every single one of our touch points across all departments has a cohesive and intentional feel to it for our clients. This step ensures that our knowledge base, again, is not just informative, but also it's authentically you. It sounds like you. When your voice is documented, your team can replicate it. When AI has it, everything sounds like you. Okay, so this is it. Our key takeaways from part 1. Let's just recap what we've covered here. First, remember that your knowledge base is an operational system. It's not just a repository. It is a living, breathing engine that powers your business. Second, do not skip the audit. You can't fix what you don't fully understand. And finally, focus on extracting those core frameworks and principles. That's where the real leverage is. These aren't just theoretical exercises. These are practical steps to building a more efficient and effective organization. Our focus is building a system here, a knowledge base, not just collecting information. And so at this point, you should now completely understand the strategic foundation of building a knowledge base that powers your AI and your whole company. In part 2, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about how to actually build it. Now, we've talked about some of the prep for it here, but we're going to get into the weeds so that you have a knowledge base that not only powers your team, but it powers your AI and powers your growth. In part 3, we're going to open up a sheet, most likely, and start filling all of this stuff out for Sell More Academy together. And so we'll do some of that research ahead of time so it's a little easier, but we'll show you exactly how to build this. So we have the strategic foundation. Next, we'll talk about the actual tactical implementation. And then finally, we will do the live workshop where we work on it together. So with that, thank you for sticking it out. I know this was a bit of a longer call. Hopefully you understand the importance. I invite you to come back for part 2, part 3, and every other masterclass. We are going to continue every single day trying to find ways that we can help you sell more. And if there's anything that we can do or any information that we can provide, please leave that in the comment below this video if you're in the class vault, or bring this into the mastermind. Let's talk about building your knowledge base together. We're here to help. We're here to learn from one another. And we're here to grow together. So with that, I'll wrap up today. I look forward to talking about this much more in detail. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Go sell more.